thank you very much for everyone for joining us. I appreciate it's very hot outside, so we really do appreciate you all joining us today. The webinar that's being delivered today is from co-founder of Axes, Robert Hopkins, and he joins us today to talk about Axes and how to make meetings successful and effective best practice. So we will be doing a Q&A at the end, so please, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box, which is just in your right-hand panel, and we'll get through to some of those at the end. But Robert, over to you. I'll let you do your introduction and start today's webinar.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. Well, it's lovely to be with you today in the sun. Just a quick introduction to me and Axis. So I'm a management consultant by training and background. So 16 years predominantly in the energy industry, particularly around low carbon energy projects. So, you know, in that time, run a lot of transformation, technology programs, been very involved in large scale capital delivery projects as well. Throughout my career, obviously sat in a lot of meetings, as I'm sure many of us do. You know, it's a big part of getting anything done is collaborating through meetings and their longer and more structured and facilitated brethren workshops. And a number of years ago, having experienced both fantastic meetings, you know, those moments that are transformational and can reset the direction of a team, a program, or a whole organization, but also sat in some that were not like that at all, right? Meetings that felt like quite a waste of time, and frustrating and ineffectual, and you know, not really achieving the potential of the people who were there, and the purpose of those sessions. You know, I set about thinking, how can technology be applied to that problem? So how can we use digital technologies to make every meeting, every workshop, every time that a team, a group of people get together to collectively solve a problem, make decisions, innovate, that time is used as purposefully as possible, that everyone's voice is heard, that we, you know, have a bias to action, create decisions that stick, be truly innovative and strategic, be honest and candid, and think differently, and create substantive and detailed content that you can do something with. That was our overarching ambition and purpose. And so that's led to Axis, which is, you know, I'm going to show you today. And as I do so, I'm going to sort of talk through some of the best practice techniques that we see around collaboration and facilitation as part of the wider you know, set of things that you do whenever you're delivering a project and a program. As Hannah said, we'll have some you know, opportunity for Q&A at the end, so really looking forward to engaging over any questions that you might have. And this session is going to be interactive, so we're going to do a make-believe session around a trip to Mars, that will give you the opportunity to you know, see how the technology works and how it might apply to the work that you do, and you know, to show you some of the best practice techniques and working in a practical way. So obviously, within any you know, program, any project, any need to drive change, to execute, meetings are a large part of the process, right? They're a large part of people's daily working life. So execs spend about 50% of their time in meetings, and yet unfortunately the sense is that much of that time is wasted. So there's a great Harvard Business Review article that cites research that shows that 71% of meetings are viewed by their participants as unproductive and ineffectual. And given the amount of time people spend in them, you know, that's really problematic. And so obviously, if we can take a team or organization and we can deliver a sustained uptick in the performance of meeting-based collaboration and make more of those meetings effective and impactful and of consequence, then you can have quite a profound transformation over how things work. So if I think about that in a program or project delivery context, and obviously there's a lot of, you know, methodology and approaches as to the rigor that you put around delivering anything, whether that's understanding your risks and issues, whether that's creating a robust plan, understanding your dependencies, creating accountability and transparency, responsibility and decision rights. All of these things fundamentally are about how do people collaborate together, right? I mean, obviously there are small things that can be done by an individual, but generally when we're doing anything of consequence, of real impact, then it requires a whole bunch of people to collaborate together within a team, across teams, within organizations, across organizations. And how those sessions, when people come together to collaborate, are run, you know, has a massive impact on overall project, program, and organizational performance. And so what I'll show you now is the product that we've developed. It's a piece of web-based technology, and it's designed to distill down the essence of what makes a great meeting. So we've done a lot of research, we've interviewed a load of people. There's actually quite a lot of literature around collaboration behaviors, from levels of inclusion, decision quality, levels of innovation, alignment, susceptibility to groupthink, all these factors that ultimately lead to quality of outcome. And we've looked at the proven techniques, so things like design thinking, some old school strategy methods, agile-based approaches that, you know, are shown to make it efficient and effective for people to collaborate. We've looked at what best practice facilitation looks like, and we've distilled that down into a set of digital frameworks that can be put together as building blocks, making it simple and easy for anyone to create a session that is aligned to their purpose and objective and what they're trying to achieve, that they're confident will run effectively, and then to be able to run that with confidence in a successful way, and using a step-by-step process. So what I'm going to go now, and hopefully, you know, my screen is being shared and you can see, you know, this is the tooling that we have, and you know, this is the home page. You can see the workshops that you know, I have, and I can create a new one, right? And there's two options. I can either build something that's totally custom, so the session I want to run is something that's particular, and there isn't a template that's the perfect fit for it, or I can go to a template library. And this template library contains a series of pre-built templates that are available to address specific issues. So if you wanted to rapidly generate ideas, or you wanted, as part of a, you know, bi-weekly cadence of running retrospectives with your sprints, you could run a retrospective. You could assess things against a value effort matrix. You know, there are a bunch of different methods. Some of you, as I said, my background is low carbon infrastructure. Some of you may be in the built environment space, looking at digital twin perhaps as a way of project program execution, capital build in the built environment. May be of interest to you that we've actually collaborated with the Centre for Digitally Built Britain around 3 pre-packaged digital twin workshops for organisations that are looking to realise value from digital twin. So we've got some stuff that may be of interest there. So these are pre-packaged. They're an end-to-end session that is built and ready to go. So if I give an example here of you know, the digital twin workshop, if I click on this, you will see that I go to this is the configuration screen for how you create a session. This is pre-configured specifically for a workshop where the objective is to define the scale use cases for digital twin. And then what we have done is we have broken down the collaboration process that you would use in any meeting or workshop into 5 phases. So the first of those phases is share, and in this case, the share isn't activated, which is about breaking the ice, getting to know each other. We then have a frame phase, which is where you understand the context. So in this case, it's about the value drivers and imperatives that you have in an organization relevant to digital twin. We then have a create phase where you generate your ideas against those value imperatives. In this case, we've configured that using a created matrix by the domain. So, you know, for digital twin, and this is aligned with the Centre for Digitally Built Britain's digital twin framework. So are you using it for strategy and planning? Are you using it for asset management? Are you using it for assurance? And then also what data source does this digital twin draw on? Is it just internal data? Is it in-sector, or is it cross-sector? So there's a way of categorizing the use cases that you're going to generate. So that's how you build ideas. And then the next phase is about how you evaluate them. And in this case, we're using dot voting, so a secret ballot approach to collectively prioritize which ideas should you take forward, and then a 2D matrix to understand them in terms of effort and value. And then that's followed by an action phase where you can create an action list against the ideas that you want to execute, with as many actions as are required, each with an owner and a due date. So you've got clarity of accountability of what you're actually going to do coming out of the session. So this gives you a sense of how a pre-built template works. In this case, as I said, specifically for the creation of a digital twin strategy. But what I want to do today is run a real workshop around a trip to Mars. So this is one that I built custom. So exactly the same approach that you saw before, 5 phases. First phase, icebreaker, getting to know each other, getting in the right mindset. And here what you'll see, because it's not a template, so the activities in each of these steps that you're going through have not been predefined, you can see that I have a series of options. So if I wanted to, I could do a finish the sentence exercise. So I want to go to Mars because, or whatever you think is relevant. That's then followed by the frame, the create, the evaluate, and the action. And again, against all of these, there are a whole variety of different methods that you can use. In the case of this workshop, and this is the one that we're going to run, the objective is to identify and prioritize a set of ideas to mitigate the key mission risks with a set of actions to execute. So this is all going to be around a trip to Mars, so we can come up with an approach to execute that project of us executing a successful Mars mission with launch by 2028. So in this case, I've chosen in the frame phase to use a risk matrix, so we can understand the probability and impact of the risks that exist with interplanetary travel. I then, based upon those risks, will be able to prioritize them and then determine what are the key thematic risks that exist for this particular mission. And then we'll be able to create ideas. In this case, unlike the digital twin, where it was by data source and by type, this one is by area and phases. So we'll be able to create ideas against rocket, shuttle, and kit. And then the phases of the mission, so launch, space, and Mars. We're then going to evaluate them with a dot voting, which I've selected. Obviously, I could choose a different method if I wanted, but we're going to stick with dot voting. And then we've got an action list, which will enable us to define the actions to execute the ideas that we want to take forward with owners and due dates. So if I just summarize that, you can now see the workshop that's been created. Obviously, that can be configured and edited and tailored to your specific requirements. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start this workshop and we're going to run it. You will have the chance to participate, so to create your own ideas, your own risks, to prioritize them, and that will give us a view of how the tool works, and I can talk through some of the best practice. And the key principle here is one of structure, right? So clarity of objective, clarity of key question, which is the ultimate litmus test of what we're trying to achieve in the session, and then a very clear structure of the things that we're going to do, so it's unambiguous what the process will be as we go through it. So if I now start this workshop, and imagine we were running this for real, we were all, I don't know, working for Mars or for SpaceX or whoever, and we've got to do a Mars mission. And so what's going to happen is everyone is going to log on, and it'd be great if you could do this now. Everyone is going to log into the workshop using the QR code or the link that I'm sharing on the screen now. So if you've got an iPhone, pull up your phone, go to the camera, put it over the QR code, and it'll take you to a unique link where you can put in your name, go through the security piece, and you will join the workshop. So I will give everyone an opportunity to do that. You can join at any time. There is always a link at the bottom here with the joining URL, so join.getaccess.app, and the unique code, which is tree-he-corn. You can also use the link that's available here. So I'll just give a few moments for others to join the session. And the principle of this is to give everyone the opportunity to participate, right? So we've gone for a smartphone interface because it's simple, people can walk around with it. If some people are in the room, it doesn't feel like everyone's sitting behind their laptops. Obviously, if someone is remote, they've got the dual screen approach. So it's a powerful and effective way of collaborating. Okay, fantastic. As I said, anyone can join at any time using the URL here and the 3-letter code. So now, as a facilitator, I'm going to take you through the process. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to align on what is the objective of the session, the key question which we set earlier. So this is about identifying and prioritizing ideas to mitigate the key mission risks of miles travel. Next thing I'm going to do is get everyone aligned on the journey. So what's the process that we're going to go through? We're going to understand the risks, prioritize them on a risk matrix, understand thematically what are the key risks that we want to focus on, generate ideas to mitigate those risks within a structured way, looking at the different mission phases and the areas across the shuttle, rocket, and kit. We're going to vote to prioritize those ideas, and then we're going to generate an action list for each of the ideas that we want to take forward with owners and due dates. So at the end of it, we have this full traceability from what were our risks, what was the collective view of which were most consequential, what were the ideas to mitigate them, which were the best ideas to mitigate them that we really want to focus on, and then what actions do we need to take. So as I go forward, we then go into the first of those activities, which is the risk matrix. And so, let's imagine that we're all rocket engineers and space people, and the purpose is for each of us with our domain expertise to identify the risks that we think are most consequential. So as I now move one forward, and if you look at your device, what you will see is that you have the opportunity to create a risk with a description on your device. So, you can put in whatever risk that you want and submit it. So what you can do is you type into the device, just think of it almost as a digital sticky note. Once you're happy with your risk, you can submit it. You can see the risks that other people have created, which might stimulate you to think of other things. And then when you're finished, as in, you've got no more risks to enter into the tool, you can click you're done, and then that becomes visible to the facilitator. And the idea here is most people actually are quite introverted in a collaboration context. And the idea of having to have the pressure of a kind of traditional brainstorm, which is verbal, of people, shouting out ideas, makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And so this is to give people the space and the time to think and generate ideas. So what I would normally do here, and this is kind of an approach that I'd use for every aspect of every activity, is you're always thinking about giving people the space and the time to think independently and generate ideas of detail and quality. So one of the things that I've observed running many workshops with pens and sticky notes is that big pen, small sticky note tends towards 1, 2, 3 word answers, which then tends you towards things that are generic and not very detailed, right? So when you come to the write-up and then you come to take that away, you're like, what does this actually mean? It's ambiguous. It can have multiple different meanings. So when it comes to then prioritization, collective prioritization, one person thought it meant this, another person thought it meant something else. And that ambiguity then becomes very dangerous, right? It means that you're building on sand. And so we're very keen within the process of facilitation that you start off always with giving people the space and time to think. And that should be done in silence, because people's cognitive process is disrupted by other people talking. It's very difficult to both listen to someone else talk and have deep thought at the same time. And so we would recommend that when you're going through this process, you systematically have a 5-minute period of silence, independent thinking, to create an initial set of ideas. And then that's followed by collective discussion around them, right? So we've got a bunch of 13 ideas, so thank you for that. And then let's move on to step 2. So this is the collective discussion refinement. So at this point on your device, we can all scan through independently and look at them, you know, to get a common understanding. Obviously, we could have a discussion around them, you know, build out some of the ideas. So, you know, you could, you know, whatever you want to put in. And then at this point, again, one thing I tend to do is I would give people a couple of minutes just to read what other people have put, again, in silence. There's always a tendency when you come into the collective discussion refinement part of the process in collaboration to immediately go into discussion. What you miss there is that that means that people haven't had the chance to read what other people have put. And therefore, the discussion is really people promoting their own thoughts because they haven't really had the chance to engage with other people's ideas. Whereas if you bake into your agenda and into your structure the time for people to, again, just read and understand, the quality of the discussion that follows, the level of alignment and the engagement in the diversity of ideas rather than just the things that people have thought for themselves is really improved. So that's a really helps. Next challenge is we've got 13 different risks. Obviously, some of them are similar. So, you know, we could say actually aliens is duplicated here. So I could discard one idea of alien. But we need to prioritize them, right? Because not all risks are equal. And we need to do that in a way that hopefully benefits from the wisdom of crowds, is transparent, and is credible. And so the next step in this workshop, if I now go forward, is what you will see on your device is that each of those risks is there. And if you open that risk up, you'll see you have the opportunity to score it both in terms of impact, so what would be the consequence if that risk manifests as an issue, and the probability, so how likely is that risk to become an issue. And you can use the sliders to score between 0 and 5 across each of those dimensions. So what happens is you score those risks. So I'll just be scoring them myself. You can do the same. And this is the core principle of if you take a bunch of specialists or even non-specialists and you get them to collectively score, and you could choose not to score one if you felt that you didn't have good reason to understand it, but you know, you score each of these, and it means that we're now going to get a collective outcome. And the view is that a collective outcome is better than an individual outcome. So we should have a more robust approach. Now, given the time we have available, obviously a workshop like this would probably take half a day to run properly. So I'm going to skip through bits of it and move at reasonable pace. But if I just go forward, right, you can start to see the results of that process, right? So these are the distribution of those risks across the matrix. Obviously, the red ones are more consequential, the blue ones less so. You know, impact here, probability here. Now that's great. So you know, we've got a bunch of risks. But what's interesting then is the ability to then see the individual scores that sit behind the average. So each of those dots is the mean across those two dimensions. So it's the kind of collective position. But here you can now see the distribution of that. And you can see that there's a relatively tight cluster in terms of impact, but there is a very quite significant variance in terms of probability. So it starts to give you the opportunity to understand what's driving that and have a more detailed conversation around breaking that risk down. Now, obviously, you can choose to move things about if you want, or take it back to its original, or whatever it is, right? So that gives you a chance to collectively refine your view of risks, move through them all systematically, and there's a huge distribution with that. Until you're comfortable that yes, this is the right set of prioritized risks that we want to take forward to focus on. And once that prioritization is done, we then go into a process which is called affinity mapping, right? And the idea here is, and what you'll see is that the top risk in that list is the one that is the highest combination of impact and probability all the way down to the lowest based upon those scores that you just saw. And this now gives you a chance to see, well, what are the common features that you might see? So for example, we run out of fuel is a distinct risk. Is there anything okay, not enough food. So you could say, actually, this one isn't run out of fuel. We run out of fuel or food, right? So you can start to create composites of the individual risks. So rocket explodes, that's distinct, and it's logically different from engine failure, so let's keep that separate. We've got no oxygen. Okay, that's something that's in space, but low resource, that sits logically with this one, right? So it allows you to understand the relationships between different risks in this case, and then create essentially common thematic risks that exist at a higher level. I'll just take one forward, more forward, which is alien attack. So we've now got 4 key thematic risks that we want to mitigate as a team as we try and resolve this. So as I now go to the next stage, we've got those themes. Now let's try and create some ideas to mitigate them. So same mechanics as before, right? Which is you've got on your device the ability to create ideas. In this case, you're creating ideas specifically to mitigate a risk. So if you look at those themes, you could say, okay, there's running out of fuel or food, there's a rocket explosion or no oxygen. Right, I'm gonna take a theme, I'm gonna create an idea, and I'm gonna describe it. And then I'm gonna add 2 more attributes to it, right, which is the area. So is this idea related to the rocket, the shuttle, or the kit that I'm gonna take with me? And then what phase is it? So is it related to the launch phase, the space phase, or actually being on the planet? And I can submit ideas. So this now gives people, again, the opportunity to create ideas focused on the risks that we have prioritized and thematically organized. Again, same principle, give people time and space to think and generate an initial set of ideas, and then collectively review them. And what you can do here is you've got 2 views. You can see the same thing with the ideas, but you can also see them within the matrix. And why this is useful is because it starts to help you give a very visual perspective on the coverage across the different dimensions, both in terms of the phase, so and the areas, and then also in terms of themes. So I can filter. So what have we got around the fact that it's no oxygen? Yeah, we've got something around the kit that we're going to have in space. Okay, now let's look at rocket explodes. Now let's look at run out of food. Let's now look at alien attack, right? So you can start to use this as a way to, see your coverage and understand which gaps you want to plug. You can also link those ideas. So we've got this, which is about a ray gun. That's about arms, as in weapons, rather than things connected to our shoulders. So that's about arms as well, and then we could filter on arms if we wanted to, right? So it's starting to give you the ability to really curate this into a comprehensive and complete view of the opportunities to mitigate the risks that we've identified. So you'd obviously, do that. You'd spend some time discussing them. You might edit the ideas, so you might, build on what's all there. You can build, you can obviously collect the conversation, the discussion, so you build this stuff out. So fantastic. We've now got 7 different ideas to mitigate the risks that we've identified. But which ones do we really want to prioritize? Because we've got a finite amount of resources for the next, 6-9 months of delivery. Where should we really focus our efforts? And in this case, I'm just going to reduce that duplicate because we've already got ray guns, so we don't need two ray guns. Okay, so if I now go forward, we've got our ideas. Now we need to evaluate them. And for this, we're going to use a process called dot voting. Now, dot voting, or it's also known as the dotocracy, is a way of, again, collective decision making. You give everyone a number of votes, they place those votes, and then you obviously see the results as to which ideas got the most. I've used dot voting a lot in physical workshops, sticky notes on the wall, everyone's given 5 circular stickers and they go and place it. It's a great activity. The big problem is it is very susceptible to groupthink. You can see as you watch people place their votes, the tendency towards going with the crowd and, oh, others have placed dots there, right, I'll do the same. Whereas if you run it as, in this case, it's essentially a secret ballot, so you can't see how others have voted, then you get a much more robust output. So What you'll see now as I move forward is you'll see on your device those 7 different ideas. You'll see that you've got 5 votes that you can then place, so you can scroll through the ideas and you can place them on the ideas that you like best until you're out of votes and say that you're done. So this is giving everyone the opportunity to vote. You can place multiple ideas on multiple votes on a single idea if that's what you want to do. And then once everyone has had the chance to vote, you then move forward again, and now you can see the collective view of which ideas are the most popular. And so again, this is a way of collective prioritization. You might say, well, do we want to discard these because we don't have the capacity to execute them? You can obviously again filter by the different dimensions. So where does it sit within the phases and the areas? Where does it sit within the themes? And one of the key principles that you'll see in every aspect of this, and in the voting, but also in the idea generation, is the notion of anonymity, right? So people can't see how you voted. They can't see who submitted what risk. They can't see who submitted which idea. And that's a very important principle, because unfortunately, people are often quite nervous putting forward what they really think. People are nervous of challenging orthodoxy, challenging the hierarchy, being seen to be wrong, or say something that's silly. These are all very human behaviors. And if I think about many of the things that I've done in my career, there've often been situations where there've been quiet experts in the room, people who really know their stuff, but are crowded out from the process of discussion or decision making by those who are more extroverted or confident or senior. Or there's a tendency to follow the boss, right? What the boss says, everyone kind of gets on that bandwagon because it's the safe place to be. Or certain people get interrupted more and therefore don't have their voice heard. And one of our core principles is about how do you harness the power of diversity, right? So diverse points of view are more able to spot risks, more able to find innovative ideas to mitigate them, more able to innovate and drive challenge and change. And so we see that as a fundamental principle of the process of collaboration in meetings and workshops. And we see it as something that if you can embed into these exercises, you can also build out to help how overall programs, projects, and organizations work and function. So in this case, everyone's had the chance to give their perspective. You can have a discussion around that and then come to a collective view, yes. And we all know, right, about the legitimacy of the outcomes as well. Because it's been collectively made, the way it's been done, it is legitimate in that sense, and therefore it probably has more ability to execute with confidence, because everyone can say, well, we all agreed this is something that we collectively came to. We were able to put forward our points of view, our perspectives. We were given the opportunity to prioritize them. There was no ambiguity, right? Because we and I know we didn't have a huge amount of time to write detailed content, but in this case, we've done quite a lot of tests and we've compared the amount of content per idea. If you think of cards in Axis or sticky notes in a physical workshop, and you get 4 times the number of words on average using this digital technique. So you get much more specificity and detail. So the things that we voted on, that we've collectively agreed, there's less ambiguity, people understand what they're voting on, and therefore the results are much more robust. So this is a really important point, because this is now the decision point as to, well, what are we actually going to do? What are we going to expend resource on? Where's the focus going to be for the next whatever period to execute our Mars mission? And then we go into the final step, right? So with our prioritized ideas selected, we then go into the action phase. Now, this bit is quite dry, right? Because creating actions with owners and due dates is inherently dry, right? It's not the most exciting thing to do, but it is critical. As I'm sure you all know, right? If you run a meeting or a workshop and you fail to get to the point where you have a clear set of actions with owners and due dates, then your likelihood of actual implementation success is significantly reduced. Best practice is to collectively agree what those actions are, give them an owner, ensure that the owner verbally takes accountability for ownership, agrees the due date, clarifies that the action is clear and they understand what is expected of them, and then ideally you then send that action list out after 24 hours to get it stuck in people's mind, and then again 30 days later to reinforce it as something that needs to be done with the usual discipline of tracking and driving accountability through your governance. So the way this works is pretty simple. Each of the ideas that we've generated and prioritized and selected to take forward has the ability to create actions. Design the tent. Who's the owner of that? Me. When? Next week. Right? So you have the ability to create as many actions as you want for each idea. You systematically run through them. So, you've then got the ray gun idea. Okay, what are the actions for that? Who's the owner, due date? So you're going to continually build on this until you've gone through all the ideas and you've got a full set of ideas. Obviously, this is the review point. You can see which theme they relate to. So what's your coverage across the risks? So you've got that traceability back all the way that you've been through. You've got the actions. So you can see the actions with the owners and the due date. You'd have that across the board, and then it's time to finish the session and get executing. Now, what we then recognize is that, okay, great, so we've run that, we've created a load of content, but then you need to get it out to people. So what you can then do is you can export the data that has been created. And we've done this into Excel, so it's hugely flexible. And what it gives you is full traceability. So if I look here, this is essentially the outputs of our workshop. I was really impressed when I realized that Excel could do emojis. What we've got here is all the risks, the descriptions, the average of the impact, the probability. Did we change it to do a review score, and we did, and we moved it back, and then the thematic mapping. Right, so you can see all the data. We also in our database have the individual scores, not aligned to a particular person. We're aligned with that principle of anonymity, but it also allows you to calculate things like standard deviation. So you can see which ideas have higher or lower standard deviations as a proxy for levels of alignment and confidence. So that can be quite an interesting way of analyzing the data further. We've then got our ideas. So you can see here the ideas that we created, where they sit within the matrix, the themes that they map to, the status. So did we want to keep it or discard it in this case? The votes that they received and the number of actions. And then finally, we've got our action list that we've got here. So this is now ready to be issued to your participants and then embedded in whatever process you might be in. So whatever your project planning or your risk register, or whatever else you might be using. So that hopefully gives you a sense of how you use the tool to run a workshop which is inclusive. It uses a lot of crowd sourced outcomes. It creates more detailed and specific content, real biased action and focus on the actions at the end. And of course, you can use the tool to create any structure of workshop that you want. So you might say, actually, well, I want to run a retrospective. So as part of my cadence of project management, every sprint we will deep dive on the successes, challenges, and opportunities, and find ways to take action and improve. Right, that could be something that you embed into the cadence of how you work. Or you could use it for strategy setting right up front. So what are our strategic priorities and imperatives? You could use it for business case creation. So what are the value levers that exist? How do different initiatives or projects or portfolio projects work against them? So there's a whole host of different ways that you can use this within your meetings. And what we've started to do now is collaborate with organizations to take a step back, look at their overall meeting and collaboration culture. So which meetings do they run? that are of greatest consequence because they matter most to the key drivers of overall organizational performance. How are they working today? So what's the collective view of whether those meetings are effective or not? And actually, we've got a template within Axis to do this. So, as a team, which meetings do we do? Understanding them on a 2D matrix in terms of how consequential is that meeting? How important is it to organizational performance? And then on the other dimension, how well is it being run? So you can start to categorize between, well, here's a meeting that's not very important, it's not very well run, but it's not very well important, so it's not a priority, versus those that are poorly run and very important. That's where we need to focus in. You then look at those meetings, what are they trying to achieve? You think about what the best practice approach to transform them and make them consistently effective. And then you build that approach into Axis as a template, which you can then deploy across all your teams to a standardized best practice approach of doing that. And if you do that organization-wise, you can then start to see that overall uptake in collaboration performance across the enterprise, which can then be very, very transformational. So that's what really excites us. Is yes, absolutely. How do you run a risk prioritization workshop well, and that can be really powerful. And then taking that further to, well, how do we make sure that every time we look at risk as an organization, we're doing it using these best practice techniques, we're making the most of the human talent, the diversity of thinking, the diversity of minds that we have within those sessions to get the best possible business outcome, and make sure that's something that we systematically do. And for us, that's the principle of democratizing best practice facilitation. So how do you make it simple and easy to turn anyone into a really effective facilitator? Because unfortunately, people who are highly skilled at facilitating meetings and workshops are quite rare, right? It's like any other skill, it requires experience. Whereas if we can give people the scaffolding to build effective sessions and then the structure to help them go through a systematic process to run them, we democratize that skill and therefore allow it to scale. And our view is that if every meeting that's run can be just moderately more effective, more successful, more inclusive, higher impact, then that can have a profound impact on how organizations run. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm leaving some time. So I know we've got about a quarter of an hour left for Q&A. So let me pause the demonstration and get people's questions in, and we'll do some Q&A. I'm also going to close my curtains because I am getting cooked by the sun.
Perfect. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Rob. That was really interesting. A really good solution that you've got, obviously, to do all of your meetings. So that was really interesting to see. So I'm just looking at the questions panel now. If you do have any questions, please do send them in. We do have a couple, and that is what. So the first one is, do you have any examples of how the tool is being used, like best practice and things like that?
Yeah, so it's being used for a host of different purposes. For example, a pharmaceutical company used it to engage with patients with chronic conditions to understand their experiences of diagnosis and treatment, and then improve the healthcare offering associated with that condition. It's been used to set strategy around children's safeguarding for a local authority. It's been used by the C-suite of a major corporate to bring agile techniques into the boardroom for the delivery of major programs. So actually embedding an approach of running C-suite retrospectives as part of the cadence of transformation. It's been used around major capital project delivery. Similar versions of what I showed. We've not used it for mass travel, unfortunately. That would be pretty cool. But we've used it for large-scale capital delivery. So a host of different use cases. The common thing across them all is that need to have an open, honest, detailed, specific engagement around an issue, something that you're trying to deliver. So yeah, lots of different examples.
Sorry there, just on mute. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that. Another question, how much training is required to use the system?
Yeah, so the fundamental principle is to make it simple and easy, right? So that's why we've broken down the collaboration process into these 5 steps, share, frame, create, evaluate, and action. And then, each of those you have the choice of which activities you want to do, and then they're easily configurable. Our experience is that people just playing around with it, can get up to speed pretty quickly. However, if you want to expedite that process and you want to say, we want to, really quickly get a team of people experienced, then maybe like a train the trainer type model, and sort of spread it throughout the organization, we can run training sessions. Generally, it takes about 30 minutes of just talking people through it, and then they're comfortable. So it has that's one of our fundamental principles. Is it has a low barrier to adoption and usage, right? This isn't, you're not dependent on being a professional facilitator, has a deep understanding of design thinking, and is comfortable at facilitating, complex activities to help people collaborate. The tool takes away that complexity so that you can focus on the human interaction, and be confident that it will run effectively.
Awesome, thank you, Rob. And then the last question that we have you got any diversity and inclusion user cases?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned early on the importance of diversity and collaboration. So there's a lot of research that shows that diverse teams of people make better decisions, more able to innovate, solve problems. And so but diversity isn't sufficient, right? I mean, you can have a diverse group of people, but if the process isn't inclusive, then you're not benefiting from that diversity. So it's necessary but not sufficient. And so that's why the principle of anonymity and giving people the space and time to think, the simplicity of the interface, is critical to driving that inclusive process. And because that's an important principle for us broadly, it's also something that we're working on in a slightly different way, which is we think organizations should be addressing their diversity and inclusion challenges head on, and that they should be doing it in a structured, facilitated, collaborative way. And so what we have built and are building is a set of templates specifically to support organizations and teams to engage with diversity and inclusion topics. So we've built one so far, and they're free, so anyone can use them, unlimited, don't have to pay. It's there. It's a free public resource that anyone can use. And the one that we've built so far is with an organization called UNIDA. They're specialists in gender parity in the workplace, and we've built a workshop specifically to help organizations think as to the barriers to achieving gender parity, and then to generate ideas that are specific to them that can help them overcome that. And we've got a whole host of guides. We've also got a great set of research and thought leadership that UNIDA have done that can be an input pre-read to that session, so that people can see what best practice looks like and what the experience of others. So yeah, that's something that we're really proud of, and we'll continue to build out across other topics. And it's very similar. I showed you at the start of this the work we've done with the Centre for Digitally Built Britain around digital twin templates. So not around diversity and inclusion, but same principle. They are freely available for anyone to use. Because the Centre for Digitally Built Britain are very keen that any asset owning organisations in the built environment really think about digital twin and the advantage it can bring. And we're going to expand that set of free workshops over time.
Brilliant, thank you, Rob. And last but not least, we have one more question. So this is, how can you use a tool for the events? Is there a maximum number of participants that you can have on the system?
Yeah, so technically the system can take thousands of participants, right? So you can run very large scale workshops. The problem is about the sheer amount of content you generate. So if you asked 1,000 people to identify risks of going to Mars, you'd probably get well over 1,000 risks, which would obviously take a very long time for you to deduplicate them, review them, make a sense of them. So our view generally, I mean, I've facilitated workshops with 50, 60, 70 people, which can work, right? It's great if you want, you've got a big organization. They were with trade associations. So you've got a whole host of different stakeholders, and therefore having everyone in together is a very efficient way of getting alignment across a large group of stakeholders in that case. But generally, my advice would be that any good session is going to be 15 to 20 people, so that you make sure that you've got the the diversity and the representation, which is important to then get good ideas and then have alignment to execute, without there just being such a huge amount of content that it's very difficult to get through in the time that is available.
Perfect, and that's all the questions that we've got today. So all I have to obviously say is thank you so much for obviously taking the time out of your day, talking us through the solution. It looks amazing, and what we'll do afterwards to everyone that has attended is we'll send out a follow-up email with a link through to yourself, through to the website, and also we'll send you a recording of the video as well. And thank you to everyone that's obviously attended today. We will let you get back to the rest of the afternoon, go out and enjoy the rest of the sun if you've got some more of your lunch break. And yeah, if you do have any additional questions for Rob about Axes, then please do get in touch. We'll send you Rob's email after the webinar.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Hannah, for hosting.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, Rob, and take care, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the what day is it? Tuesday. Have a lovely rest of the Tuesday afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.